Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful tales of love, betrayal, resilience, and triumph. Today's story begins with Rachel Adams, a woman who sacrificed everything to build her husband's dream, only to be cast aside when success was within reach. But what Jack didn't know was that Rachel wasn't as naive as he thought. Her quiet strength and sharp instincts would turn his betrayal into her ultimate victory. Join us as we dive into a journey of heartbreak, redemption, and reclaiming power. Subscribe to Life Stories to start today's unforgettable tale. I still remember the sound of my heels clicking against the marble floor, the only noise breaking the suffocating silence of the moment. Jack stood there, whiskey swirling lazily in a crystal glass, his voice cold and detached. "Get out," he said, his tone devoid of any trace of the man I once knew. "Your things are already packed." My eyes drifted to the Louis Vuitton suitcases lined up neatly by the door, the ones he gave me last Christmas. Back then, everything still seemed perfect. I'd chosen those suitcases with such care, thinking of the trips we'd take together, the memories we'd make. Now they were symbols of my eviction, the culmination of 8 years of marriage reduced to neatly packed baggage. "Is this it?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay composed. "After 8 years of marriage, you're just throwing me out." Jack smirked and took another sip of his drink, as if my pain was a minor inconvenience. "Come on, Rachel. Let's not make this dramatic. We both know this marriage has served its purpose." His words hit me like a slap. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted with everything, spoke of our life together as if it were a business transaction. And perhaps to him, it was. Jack had always been ambitious, with dreams of building something extraordinary. When I married him, I believed in his vision as much as I believed in us. But now, standing in our grand foyer, surrounded by the opulence we'd built together, I realized that love was no longer part of his equation. "My inheritance helped build TechVance into what it is today," he continued, his tone casual. "Now that we're going public, I need someone more suitable by my side. Someone who understands the tech world." I knew what he meant. Someone like Ashley. I didn't need him to say her name to know who he was talking about. Ashley was 25, young, ambitious, and far too comfortable in our home. I'd noticed the way she looked at Jack during our dinner parties, the way their late meetings seemed to stretch longer and longer. Jack didn't bother denying it either. His smile widened at my silence. "Ashley understands vision," he said, swirling his drink again. "She gets what it takes to build something revolutionary." Revolutionary. That word had been Jack's mantra from the beginning. When we first met, he was a brilliant but struggling entrepreneur, pouring his heart and soul into a startup he swore would change the world. I was drawn to his passion, his intelligence, and the way he made me believe in his dream. It was intoxicating to think I could be part of building something so meaningful. But dreams require sacrifices, and I gave everything. When my parents died in a car accident 2 years into our marriage, I inherited $3 million, a mix of life savings and shares in the family business. To me, it was a way to honor their legacy, to invest in something that mattered. I didn't hesitate when Jack asked for it. I believed in him completely, proud to be his partner in every sense of the word. Now, as I stood there, listening to him dismiss our life together, I couldn't ignore the irony. The chandelier that hung above us cost more than most cars. The staircase was a marvel of architecture, and the art on the walls had been carefully chosen to turn this house into a home. All of it was paid for with my family's money, my trust, my love. I felt a pang of grief for the years I'd lost, the sacrifices I'd made. But beneath the grief was a growing anger, a spark of something that felt dangerously like resolve. Jack thought he'd won, that he could throw me away like an obsolete piece of machinery. He had no idea who he was dealing with. "You think you've played this perfectly, don't you?" I asked, my voice steady now, cold even. Jack raised an eyebrow. Amused. Haven't I? He said. TechVance is about to go public. I'm about to become one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. And you, he added with a shrug, will get whatever the prenup stipulates, which, if I remember correctly, isn't much. I smiled. But it wasn't a smile of defeat. It was the kind of smile that comes from knowing something the other person doesn't. I thought of the documents safely stored with my lawyer. The careful planning I'd done over the past year as Jack became more distant and arrogant. He believed he'd outplayed me. But the truth was, I'd been quietly preparing for this moment all along. As I turned toward the door, my heels clicking once again on the cold marble floor, I paused. Good luck with the IPO, Jack, I said, reaching for the handle. I'm sure it'll be interesting. For the first time. His confidence faltered. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. His smirk fading. You'll see, I replied, walking out without looking back. The heavy door closed behind me with a final thud. What Jack didn't realize, what he'd been too arrogant to even consider, was that I wasn't as naive as he thought. Growing up in a family of business people had taught me one important lesson: trust is good, but documentation is better. As I walked out of the house, no, his house now, I could still feel the weight of those words hanging in the air. Your things are already packed. It wasn't just the cold dismissal that stung, it was the casual indifference. 8 years of marriage, of shared dreams and late-night conversations, reduced to a few packed suitcases. I checked into a small suite at a Four Seasons hotel nearby. A detail I had planned ahead for. The space was luxurious but impersonal. A world away from the home I had painstakingly built. As I unpacked my belongings, memories came rushing back. I remembered how Jack and I used to laugh over takeout boxes in the early days when money was tight. Dreaming of the life we were now living. I'd believed in his vision so completely that it had felt like ours. But slowly, things began to change. At first, it was subtle, longer work hours. Fewer shared moments. I told myself it was normal. That success required sacrifice. I didn't realize then that I was the sacrifice. It wasn't just my money or my time, it was my identity. My sense of partnership. My belief in the person I thought Jack was. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring out at the city lights twinkling below. Everything Jack had now, the company he so proudly flaunted, was built on the foundation I'd given him. Without my inheritance, without my unwavering support in those early, precarious days, there wouldn't have been a TechVance. I thought back to the day I had transferred the money. It had been a sunny afternoon. The kind that makes you feel like anything is possible. Jack had hugged me tightly, his voice full of emotion as he whispered, "It's you and me against the world. Ratch. Partners in everything." I'd believed him then. Believed in us. 4 years. I wore that belief like armor, telling myself that every sleepless night, every cancelled vacation, every lonely dinner was worth it because we were building something together. I threw lavish dinner parties to help him network, carefully curating guest lists and conversations to showcase his brilliance. I listened to his ideas late into the night, offering encouragement when he doubted himself. I even handled the business logistics when he wanted to focus on big-picture thinking. And yet, when the dream became a reality, I became invisible. The once grateful partner turned into the dismissive CEO, treating me like a footnote in his grand story. I was no longer the woman who believed in him, I was a liability. An obstacle to the new image he wanted to project. I sighed and picked up my phone, scrolling through my messages. My best friend, Lauren, had texted, "Are you okay? Did you do it?" I stared at her words for a moment before typing back, "It's done. He kicked me out. Just like we expected. Ashley's already moving in." Her response was immediate, "That smug bastard. He has no idea what's coming. Does he?" I smiled for the first time all day, thinking of the carefully stored documents on my laptop and the plans I'd set in motion. "No," I replied. He doesn't. As the night stretched on, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my emotions. There was grief for what had been, anger for what had been taken, and a deep, simmering resolve. Jack thought I was done, discarded and defeated. What he didn't realize was that every betrayal, every moment of condescension, had only made me stronger. I wasn't the naive woman he thought I was. I was Rachel Adams. And this wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of my hotel room. Soft and unassuming. It was the kind of light that should have promised a new day. Fresh beginnings. Hope. But as I sat by the window, sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee, all I could feel was the heavy, aching void left by Jack's betrayal. The memories of the night before lingered, his smug expression, his dismissive tone, the sheer audacity of his words. Yet, beneath that ache, there was something else. Resolve. A quiet, burning resolve. I couldn't let him win. Not like this. It wasn't just about the money, though that mattered too. It was about dignity, about reclaiming my identity, about making sure Jack understood that I wasn't some naive woman he could walk all over. Growing up in a family of business people had taught me lessons Jack seemed to have forgotten. My father used to say, "Trust is good, but always protect yourself with proof." And proof was something I had in spades. I opened my laptop, scrolling through the files I'd meticulously saved over the past year. Contracts, investment agreements, bank transfers, all neatly documented, dated, and notarized. My $3 million inheritance wasn't just a generous act of love, it was an official business transaction. One that tied me to TechVance as a founding investor. Jack had spent years spinning the narrative that he alone had built the company from scratch, conveniently erasing my contributions. But the evidence told a different story. And then there was the matter of the offshore accounts. My stomach churned as I reviewed the bank statements again. Millions of dollars funneled quietly out of TechVance into accounts in the Cayman Islands, accounts Jack thought were well hidden. He'd always prided himself on being 10 steps ahead of everyone. But he'd underestimated me. While he was busy wooing Ashley and building his empire, I was watching, documenting, preparing. Jack believed I was the supportive wife, too blinded by love to notice his schemes. He couldn't have been more wrong. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was room service, breakfast. Though I had no appetite. Still, I thanked the server and pushed the tray inside, the small act grounding me for a moment. As I poured myself another cup of coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "What's the plan for today?" she asked. I hesitated, staring at the screen. Today was the day of TechVance's board meeting. The one where Jack planned to finalize the IPO. It would be a grand moment for him, a culmination of years of work. His chance to cement his place in the tech world. And it was the perfect moment for me to strike. I typed back, "I'm going to the board meeting." Her reply was instant. "Are you sure?" I didn't hesitate this time. "I'm ready." As I hit send, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Jack thought he'd silenced me, that I'd simply fade into the background while he moved forward with his plans. But today, he was about to learn the cost of underestimating me. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. And I intended to claim what was rightfully mine. As the dust settled and the chaos unraveled, I stood at the head of the table, looking out at the faces of TechVance's board members. Jack's empire, built on betrayal and arrogance, had crumbled. The man who once dismissed me as irrelevant now sat in silence, defeated by his own greed. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine, it was about proving that no one should ever underestimate the strength of a person who refuses to be broken. I had turned pain into power, loss into liberation. As I walked out of the boardroom, I felt lighter than I had in years. This was my fresh start, my chance to rebuild, not just for myself, but for every dream Jack tried to erase. And this is only the beginning of the journey. Subscribe to Life Stories for more powerful tales of resilience and redemption.